Ladies and gentlemen, power flows where attention goes. Guard your voice like treasure. Every word you speak is a release of energy. Every sentence you utter is a signal to the world of where your focus lies. And the man who is careless with his voice is often careless with his future. If you desire to do great things, you must learn to conserve the most powerful force you possess, your attention. Because attention is currency. It buys you clarity, it buys you influence, and when spent wisely, it buys you results. Look around at the people who speak endlessly. Notice how little they accomplish. They speak of ideas they'll never act on. They speak of dreams they never pursue. They chase applause instead of achievement. But the man who keeps his counsel, who reserves his words for things that matter, he builds something stronger, he builds momentum, he builds mystery, he builds power. Why? Because silence is not weakness. It is a weapon. When you refuse to waste your breath, you preserve your energy for action. And action, not noise, is what builds empires. Most people give themselves away with their words. They reveal their fears. They expose their doubts. They let the world read them like a book. But when you stay silent, you stay in control. You become unpredictable. And in this world, unpredictability is a form of strength. Speak less, and people begin to wonder what you're thinking. Stay quiet, and they begin to question what you know. Their minds fill in the blanks with power, competence, and that is the unseen leverage of silence. The man who speaks too much is like a leaking pipe, always losing pressure, always losing strength. But the one who contains himself, who chooses when and how to speak, walks with more gravity. His words carry weight because they are rare. His presence commands respect not by volume, but by vibration. In a world addicted to noise, silence is a signal of superiority. When you protect your voice, you protect your direction. You don't get dragged into distractions. You don't dilute your mission with meaningless talk. You use your silence to listen, to learn, to lock in on your target. And once your target is clear, you move with purpose, not with a shout, not with a speech, but with quiet, consistent motion that nobody sees coming. So guard your voice like treasure. Speak with intention or don't speak at all. Let others waste their power in gossip and bragging. You, on the other hand, will be too busy becoming the person they pretend to be. Because silence channels your focus. It shields your energy, and it transforms your every move into a statement far louder than words could ever be. Speak only to uplift, never to impress. The world is full of voices trying to outshine one another, boasting, exaggerating, declaring things they haven't yet earned. But the man who speaks to uplift rather than impress walks a different path. He doesn't need to broadcast his value. He proves it in silence, in service, and in substance. He understands a fundamental truth. Real power doesn't announce itself. It builds quietly, steadily, beneath the surface, until the results are too big to ignore. When you speak to uplift, your words become fuel for others. They carry weight because they are not centered on ego. They are not spoken to get attention, but to give clarity. And that shift from impressing to empowering is what separates leaders from performers. Performers speak to gain applause. Leaders speak to raise the standards. And in that difference lies the secret to lasting influence. The man who constantly seeks to impress is a prisoner of opinion. He lives for approval. He talks not to add value, but to be seen as valuable. But that image is fragile. It must be constantly protected, constantly fed. One moment of silence and the illusion begins to fade. But the one who speaks from strength, who speaks with purpose, not performance, never fears silence. He knows that his worth is not tied to his words, but to his act. He can afford to speak less because what he does speaks more than enough. It's easy to fall into the trap of over-talking. It's easy to want to prove yourself with clever lines and sharp comebacks. But here's the truth. Nobody was ever elevated by noise. Noise fades, echoes disappear, but words that uplift They plant seeds. They take root in the minds of others. They echo not in volume, but in value. That is the mark of true wisdom, the ability to speak when it builds and to stay silent when it doesn't. You don't need to impress anyone when you're committed to progress. You don't need to talk about the mountain you'll climb when your feet are already moving. The people who win big are not the ones who talk big. They're the ones who think big, act bold, and speak only when the words serve the mission. They understand the power of restraint. They understand that the loudest person in the room is often the weakest. And they know that influence is not measured by how many listen, but by how deeply your words land. So speak only to uplift. Let others chase claps. You chase character. Let others crave spotlight. You crave impact. Because when your words are rooted in purpose, they cut through the noise. They resonate, they rise, and they remind the world that greatness doesn't have to shout. It just has to serve. Silence builds inner fortitude and mental clarity. In the stillness, when the noise of the world fades away, you are left with the only voice that truly matters, your own. And for many, that voice has been buried under distractions, opinions, and fears. But the man who learns to be comfortable in silence discovers a secret that few ever will. Peace is power. Strength is born not in constant motion, but in calm reflection. The ability to sit with your thoughts, to face your doubts without flinching, to hear your inner dialogue without distortion. That is where mental clarity begins. Most people run from silence. They flood their lives with sound, endless conversations, music, scrolling, talking, just to avoid thinking. They are afraid of what they might hear if they were to listen too long. But the strong man does not run. He enters silence like a warrior entering a temple. He knows it is not emptiness, it is training. In silence, he sharpens his mind. In silence, he confronts his weaknesses. In silence, he builds the resilience that will carry him through every storm. You cannot master your emotions if you are constantly drowning in noise. You cannot hear wisdom if your mind is cluttered with chatter. Silence strips away the excess. It reveals what matters. It creates space between impulse and reaction, and in that space is where all personal power resides. When you are silent, you can hear not only your own thoughts, but also the patterns of others. You become more you begin to notice what people don't say. You read their energy, their movements, their habits, and you gain a quiet advantage that no amount of speaking could ever buy. Silence is where confidence is born, not the fake kind that brags and boasts, but the real kind that doesn't need to. Confidence that comes from knowing yourself deeply, from not needing to fill the air with proof of your worth, from being grounded in who you are, even when the world tries to shake you. That kind of strength only grows in silence, because when you strip away the noise, there's no one left to lie to. You meet yourself as you truly are. And when you can face that man without fear, you become unstoppable. Mental clarity is not something you stumble upon. It is something you earn. Through solitude, through reflection, through discipline. The man who carves out moments of silence in his life sharpens his thinking like a blade. He sees the path forward when others are lost in confusion. He knows what to do because he has already faced the decision in his own mind 1,000 times before. So do not fear silence. Embrace it. Seek it. Build your inner world until it is so strong, so clear, so focused that no amount of outer chaos can touch it. Because the man who has mastered silence has mastered himself. And the man who has mastered himself can master anything. The loudest voice in the room often lacks true power. Noise may draw attention, but it rarely earns respect. It may create a momentary illusion of strength, but real influence does not come from volume. It comes from presence. The man who is truly powerful does not need to declare it. He does not need to prove it. His strength is silent, steady, and unmistakable. In a world full of men shouting to be seen, the one who stands still commands the most authority. Those who talk excessively often do so to cover their insecurities. They use words as a mask, as armor, trying to convince others of what they themselves are unsure of. They speak over others, interrupt, boast, and exaggerate, believing that dominance of conversation equals dominance of life. But the opposite is true. The more a man feels the need to prove his power with words, the less of it he actually possesses. True power is quiet because it is certain. It doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself through controlled action and disciplined restraint. You can always tell who holds the real cards at the table. It's not the one who can't stop talking. It's the one who watches, who listens, who speaks only when necessary. That man doesn't chase attention, he attracts it. He doesn't need to convince anyone of his worth. His presence does it for him because he knows something others don't. When you speak less, you listen more. When you listen more, you learn. And when you learn more, you win more. Power is not in the noise. It is in the pause before the word. It's in the observation before the move. It's in the awareness that silence can often say more than any speech. People trust the man who speaks little but moves with precision. He is calculated, not careless. He acts, not reacts. And because he does not need the approval of others, he cannot be controlled by them. When you carry yourself with quiet confidence, people notice. They lean in. They wonder what you know that they don't. That curiosity gives you leverage. That restraint gives you strength. While others spend their energy trying to dominate the moment, you conserve yours for what actually matters, the outcome. Because at the end of the day, it's not about who talks the most. It's about who walks away with the victory. In business, in relationships, in life, the loudest are rarely the leaders. The real leaders are the ones others follow because of how they live, not how loudly they speak. Their strength lies not in convincing others of their greatness, but in becoming so solid, so sure of themselves that their actions make the statement their words never could. So speak less, watch more, and remember, thunder only comes after lightning. Be the lightning. Let the thunder follow. Success is the result of quiet planning and relentless execution. The foundation of every great achievement is laid long before anyone sees the outcome. It begins in silence, in solitude, in the mind of a focused individual who doesn't waste energy announcing his intentions. He studies while others sleep. He prepares while others procrastinate. And while the world watches for noise, he builds quietly, brick by brick, in the shadows. Most people never succeed because they never take the time to plan with precision. They react to life instead of designing it. They are busy being busy, talking about their goals, posting about their dreams, making grand declarations they never follow through on. But success does not reward noise. It rewards discipline. It rewards the man who sits with a clear vision, carves out the steps, and moves without fanfare. He doesn't need to impress anyone. He is too focused on becoming someone no one can ignore. Planning in silence allows for purity of thought. It strips away the distractions. It brings clarity. When no one is watching, the pressure to perform vanishes, and in its place rises a deeper motivation, the drive to fulfill your own potential. That's where the real fire lives, not in being seen, but in building something that speaks for itself. And once the plan is made, the only thing that matters is relentless execution. Quiet, consistent, tireless work done without applause, without recognition, without needing a spotlight. Success demands that kind of grit. It does not come to those who dabble. It comes to those who are obsessed with the process. Those who do not look for shortcuts or approval, but instead look at each day as another opportunity to build. These are the ones who win, not because they were lucky, not because they were loud, but because they were loyal to the grind when no one else was watching. Talk less about what you will do. Spend that energy doing it. Don't seek motivation, build momentum. Wake up with a purpose, execute with precision, and go to bed with peace. That is how success is born, in small, invisible actions that compound over time, in sacrifices made in silence, in goals pursued with tunnel vision, By the time the world notices, it's already too late to catch up. The man who succeeds big is the man who works silently, strategically, and relentlessly. He mastered the art of keeping his vision to himself and letting his progress do the talking. His results are not a surprise. They are the natural outcome of preparation and persistence. So make your plan. Keep it to yourself. Then go out and execute with such consistency that one day the world will be forced to ask how you did it, and all you'll need to do is smile, because you'll know the truth. Success didn't come from the noise. It came from the silence behind it. Observation creates advantage. Listen more to win more. In a world where everyone is eager to be heard, the one who chooses to listen gains the upper hand. While others speak, reveal, and expose their thoughts without restraint, the observer stays silent, watches closely, and learns. Power lies not just in what you say, but in what you choose to notice. The man who listens more than he speaks becomes a collector of truths, a student of human behavior, and a master of timing. Most people rush to speak, thinking their voice alone will earn them respect or influence, but they overlook a deeper truth. People reveal everything when they talk too much: their insecurities, their intentions, their weaknesses. If you pay attention, they'll show you how they think, how they feel, and how they can be outmaneuvered. But you must be still. You must be quiet enough to notice the details that others ignore. In silence, your awareness sharpens. Your instincts become more accurate. Your decisions become more precise. The mind that is always talking cannot listen. It cannot receive new insights or understand the layers beneath a conversation. But when you train yourself to remain quiet and fully present, you begin to see beyond the surface. You detect the hesitation in someone's voice, the nervous twitch in their body, the truth hidden behind their words. You gather information not through interrogation, and with that knowledge you gain leverage, because you now know what moves to make while they remain blind. In business, relationships, or life, the man who sees the most wins the most. He doesn't need to react emotionally or respond quickly. He studies, he reflects, he waits, he understands that timing is everything, and the more you observe, the better you strike. This kind of patience is a form of discipline. It comes from self-control, from the decision not to speak just to be heard, but to speak only when you fully understood the moment. Listening more also gives you the chance to learn from others' mistakes without having to make them yourself. When you observe how people operate, how they succeed, and how they fail, you begin to see patterns. You begin to understand what works and what doesn't. And when the time comes for you to act, your move is backed by wisdom, not guesswork. The silent observer becomes a quiet architect of strategy. He does not rush to impress. He does not feel the need to fill every silence with speech. Instead, he uses the silence to collect data, to build insight, to shape his approach. And when he moves with confidence because he is acting from understanding, not impulse. So listen more, watch more, let others reveal themselves while you remain grounded, focused, and aware. In every situation, there is something to learn, something others are too busy talking to see. The man who sees the most wins the most. Not because he made the most noise, but because he listened when it mattered most.